Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. Currently, we're on day 4 of Russia's disastrous civil war, so let's check in and see how it's going. Belgorod incursion appears to be mostly over, but competing claims remain. Moscow claims to have completely eliminated the pro-Ukraine forces and pushed them out of Russia, but the fighters say the Kremlin is talking gibberish. So here are the two groups that crossed the border from Ukraine into Belgorod. It's the Freedom of Russia Legion and the Russian Volunteer Corps. And according to the Kremlin, they're all dead. The Russian military successfully eliminated all of them. So of course, these two zombie groups held a press conference and answered questions from reporters. And I want to share a small clip from Caesar. That's his call sign. He is one of the leaders of the Freedom of Russia Legion.
Паническая реакция была абсолютно неадекватная. То есть прошло несколько часов, пока начало появляться какое-то организованное сопротивление. Да? Если бы мы ставили более глубокую цель операции, в данном случае, мы бы могли дойти и до Белгорода. У нас не было такой задачи.
А сейчас они начинали стрелять сильно на вас?
Ну, естественно, что они стреляют, но они не столько по нам попадают, сколько они попадают по домам мирных жителей, понимаете, разрушая уже свою собственную территорию.
So these two Russian rebel groups met very little resistance. The border checkpoint only had about 25 Russian soldiers, 23 of whom were fresh conscripts with no experience. So they easily overran the checkpoint, and he says if it was their mission, they probably could have driven all the way to Belgorod. But they didn't bring enough fuel and resources to go that far. This was always going to be a temporary border incursion, kind of a public relations event to draw attention to their groups, find more recruits, find funding, get intelligence, let people inside Russia know that the resistance is growing. What was the true Russian reaction of everybody in Belgorod? We effed up. Shock, but no panic in Belgorod as the border incursion brings home the war. So in this clip, Caesar is saying that once Russian forces finally started showing up, they were indiscriminately firing everywhere, hitting civilian homes. These rebels care more about the lives of ordinary Russian citizens than the official Russian government. So they felt it was necessary after the second day to pull back inside of Ukraine. I like this meme, 3 days, they told me 3 effing days. Now the world is seeing Russians invading Russia. So this was a huge embarrassment for the Kremlin, huge embarrassment for the Russian military. And to prove to their people that all of these Russian insurgents were killed, they released the most absurd propaganda. If you haven't seen these pictures and videos online, I'll link them down below. But here is the evidence they're providing that all of these Russian rebels were killed. American Humvees in this ditch with the vehicles full of bullet holes. But when you start to scrutinize the photographs, it gets kind of suspicious. I want to give credit to Jack's House on Twitter for posting this thread. I'm going to share his analysis. First thing is the tires. The tires don't have any gravel in the treads, meaning they haven't been recently driven on gravel, which is allegedly where these vehicles were destroyed. Next, this Humvee apparently crashed into a ditch, but you'll notice that none of the dirt in front of the vehicle has been disturbed. If this vehicle crashed and was unable to move in the ditch, then dirt should have been kicked up, at least onto the hood of the vehicle. Next, you'll notice that for this vehicle, the tire's in the air, but none of the dirt underneath the vehicle has been disturbed. It's impossible for the vehicle to get to this point without at least the front tire having touched or disturbed the dirt underneath it. Then finally, we have dirt that has been disturbed. but it's been disturbed in a horizontal fashion. So the theory is that Russia got these Humvee vehicles from somewhere, they shot them up, and then they put them on the back of a car, a flatbed, took them to the site, lowered them into the ditch with a crane, and then adjusted them to make them look like they had been destroyed. So this vehicle had been pushed in a horizontal motion to get it into this position. There are more pictures. Let me share them with you. Here's one of the vehicles that was Ukrainian at some point, but it had been destroyed. And you'll notice this tire has been blown out or set on fire or whatever, but there's no tire shards. There's a little bit right here, but where's the rest of the tire? Additionally, there's a picture of the inside of one of the vehicles full of bullet holes. And if there was a shootout and all the occupants inside the vehicle were killed, where's the blood? Why is there no blood inside the vehicle? And then finally, to me, the most convincing, here's a destroyed Humvee with smoke and burn damage on the door. But spray painted on the door, it says for Bakhmut, allegedly indicating that these Russian rebels spray painted the side of their American-made Humvee, as an act of revenge for losing Bakhmut. The problem is that the spray paint is on top of the smoke damage. If the vehicle was destroyed, the spray paint is put on top of it after it's been destroyed. So it's obvious that this vehicle was brought in from somewhere else, messed up to look like it had been destroyed in a battle, and then they spray painted on the side of the vehicle for Bakhmut to let everyone know these were the Russian rebels. So it's pretty laughable, but the official position is that they were all killed, and they gave a press conference once they made it back to Ukraine. So this clip I'll link down below. This is one of the leaders of the Russian Volunteer Corps. His name is White Rex, and he was asked about the evidence of their losses presented by the Russians. This is what he says. I can say the following, as Vladimir Putin once said, you can get any type of combat vehicle in any military shop, so I don't believe it is exotic. Meaning, Putin once said, why is all this Russian military equipment appearing in the Donbass region? Putin said, well, you can buy Russian military equipment anywhere. Doesn't mean the Russians were supporting the rebels in the Donbass region. Secondly, there's enough American equipment that was captured by the Russian side in Bakhmut, changing hands, so there is no reason to be surprised about these things. Yes, it's true. American-made Humvees have been captured or purchased on the black market by the Russians so that they could stage this photo op to not make their military look incompetent. So here's a question from a reporter. So you deny the equipment belongs to you and that you had any losses. Thank God the Russian Volunteer Corps only had casualties among 2 people. 2 people were wounded. Nobody was killed. In terms of equipment, we only had gains, meaning they captured some Russian military equipment and brought it back with them over the border into Ukraine. So what was the true purpose? I already mentioned, once again, public relations, get volunteers, get funding. But I think Ukraine really wanted this event to happen in order to panic the Russian people living along the border. I guess for the last 15 months, the Russian military only felt like they had to fortify and protect their borders in the occupied territories. In effect, with this successful border raid, the amount of territory Russia now has to defend just doubled. All of the Russian citizens of the border region are now screaming for more resources, more protection, a larger military presence to protect the border regions. Russia's hubris was Ukraine, or these Russian rebel groups, would never dare attack inside Russia in the Sumy region, the Chernihiv region, or the Kharkiv region. Russia was wrong. But why stop there? Why stop at the border between Ukraine and Russia? 99% of Russia's borders are unprotected. The Russian military can't defend it all. So if there are Russian men unhappy with their government, currently hiding out in Kazakhstan, Mongolia, or China, it's not that hard to get some weapons, cross the border, and cause some trouble. So the Russian military has been exposed. I expect these border incursions to increase, to happen more frequently. Once again, the purpose just to be limited raids in order to get attention, get funding, and steal some stuff if you can steal proper Russian military equipment. And here it is on Kremlin State TV. I think this propagandist's name is Roman, and he's talking to a Russian military expert. And listen to this incredible clip.
А есть возможность это предотвращать?
Ну, я сейчас скажу то, что всем не понравится. Вторая волна мобилизации 500 тысяч человек.
Это для того, чтобы вот эту часть держать?
Нет. Для того, чтобы всю границу держать и закончить всю эту войну. Это не СВО, это война. Причем гражданская.
So this Russian military expert, in response to his question, can we hold the borders? He says no. We need to mobilize 500,000 men today just to hold the original borders. Never mind the occupied territories in Ukraine. So go ahead and screenshot this, screen record this. I'm going officially on record that Russia's done. Offensively, they're not going any farther. They're never going to make it to Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, let alone take the entirety of the Donbass region. They're never taking Zaporizhia. They're never getting to the north bank of the river again to retake this part of Kherson. Russia offensively is done. They're not going any further. And this guy, dousing Kremlin State TV with some realism, says we need to mobilize 500,000 men just to hold the pre-war border. So Ukraine's counteroffensive is coming. I think the Russian military has already made the plans to fall back to Crimea. All the forces in Zaporizhia and Kherson are going to fall back to the Donbass region and Crimea, and their goal is just to hold, to somehow convince the Europeans to force Ukraine to the negotiating table, let them keep Crimea, and possibly the cities of Donetsk and Luhansk. But at this point, I think Russia would trade this occupied area away just to hold on to Crimea. They want a negotiation to keep Crimea. It's not going to happen, but that's their goal. And I hate talking about Prigozhin, but he keeps saying things I like. So Prigozhin, yet again, did an interview. It was over an hour long, and I have to share with you just some of the clips. This is what he said. We've militarized Ukraine. Furious Wagner chief on how Putin's special operation has backfired. Prigozhin covered a lot of topics in his most recent interview, including how he believes Russia needs to live in the image of North Korea for a certain number of years. So let me read with you, I'll link these down below, but let me read for you the most important parts of this interview. I have no clue where he is. This looks like a chiropractor's office. So he says, yes, denazification, thus the denazification of Ukraine, which we were talking about. We've made Ukraine a nation which everybody knows around the world. And I don't know, it's like the Greeks during the era of Greece's prosperity, like the Romans were during the era of, then the reporter says, they've been legitimized. Exactly. Ukraine has been legitimized. If we go back in time 2 years ago, I'm sorry, I didn't know President Zelensky's name. I knew the capital of Ukraine was Kyiv, but I don't think I could name any other city. So let's fast forward in time 2 years, and President Zelensky's sitting at the table with the G7, being invited to the Arab Summit in Saudi Arabia. He's been on a tour of world capitals, having given speeches to Parliament and to Congress and in Berlin. So Russia really screwed up if their goal was to not promote this guy. The official Kremlin propaganda talking point is that Zelensky is a gay Jewish Nazi demon, and he's evil, guilty of a genocide in the Donbass region, so we need to denazify Ukraine. It's not going very well. Ukraine has become a country which is known absolutely everywhere. That's as far as denazification is concerned. A failure if you actually believe the government of Ukraine is full of Nazis. Now, as far as demilitarization, a painful issue. Painful, yes. If at the start of this special operation, Ukraine had 500 tanks, hypothetically speaking, well, today they have 5,000 tanks. If at the beginning of the war they had 20,000 men who were able to fight, now they have 400,000 men capable of combat operations. How have we demilitarized it? It turns out we've done the exact opposite. F knows how, but we've militarized Ukraine. So if Ukraine was a government of Nazis that was a threat to Russia, are they stronger today, militarily, than they were 2 years ago? Yes. Absolutely, in every way, yes. Ukraine's military is a lot more capable today than it was before Russia's invasion. So let's continue. Today, I think Ukraine is one of the strongest armies in the world. He then says they have a high organizational level, high level of training, high level of reconnaissance. They have diverse equipment, and moreover, they operate any systems, Soviet, NATO, anything, with similar success. And they feel very philosophically about the losses they are taking. From them, everything goes to reach the supreme goal, like us in the Great Patriotic War, but more technological and more organized. This is what we got with demilitarization of the Ukrainian army. I have no clue how Prigozhin is still alive. When you listen to Russian propagandists like Scott Ritter or that Colonel McDouglas guy, they're claiming that the Ukrainian military is on their last legs, about to collapse any day, and then Russian tanks are going to roll all the way to Kyiv and take the capital city. But that's not what Prigozhin says. That's not what they're saying on Kremlin State TV. On Kremlin State TV, they're saying, we need to mobilize 500,000 men just to hold our own borders, to stop Ukraine from invading us, basically. And we get glimpses of what the Russian military is actually like. These drone videos are highly disturbing because in the Russian military, it's everyone for themselves. I've seen countless drone videos of men getting killed or injured, and they're just left. They're left by their fellow service members. I saw a video this week where a Russian soldier was killed, and then 2 Russian soldiers looked like they were about to help him or recover the body, and all they did was steal his watch and then continue walking. And we're talking about the basics, the bare basics. This video is of Russian soldiers drinking water from a filthy, muddy stream, using a helmet as a cup, drinking water with their hands. I don't know how many days I would have to go without water before I would drink this disgusting canal ditch water, full of the remnants of all of the explosives and mines and artillery shells that have been draining into it. And this is a common theme that Ukrainians are seeing. I see these POW videos. I'm careful not to share them because you never know if they're being, given confessions under duress. You're not supposed to show videos of prisoners of war. But sometimes I feel like it's so important, I have to share this with you. So here is a Russian prisoner of war who was just captured by the Ukrainians. And the standard question they ask these guys now is, how many days since you ate last? And this Russian POW who was just captured says he hasn't eaten in 4 days.
Родом из Улан-Удэ, так в Питере живу.
Понял.
Сколько вас дней не кормили? 4-й сегодня пошел.
А почему?
А потому что получается, нас оттуда выдернули, вот мы стояли за Лисичанском где-то в лесу. Вот, ну там что свое было, еще ели, а сюда привезли. Вот, Вагнера нам показали позиции, сказали, будут приносить еду. Вот я с собой брал, но нас начали обстреливать, я рюкзак скинул. Добежал до позиции. Ну, точнее, с проводником добежал до позиции. Вот, еды с собой не было. В дырке я нашел, там была вода. И у меня с собой были печеньки натовские такие, которые маленькие, водой запивают. И несколько конфет, и все. Воду я последнюю выпил вчера. Нет, сегодня утром допил, там на глоток оставил еще.
Согласно Женевской конвенции, тебе гарантируется нормальное обращение. За твоим выбором или ты пойдешь на обмен.
So this is a pretty interesting piece of information. They immediately tell this Russian POW, either you can go into the exchange funds so we can get our prisoners back, or if you want, you can stay in Ukraine until the war is over, and then once the war is over, somehow we'll figure out how to get you back to Russia. It's your choice. Sounds like a pretty good deal if you don't want to be used as cannon fodder by Putin. And here's an incredible video from Dmitry at War Translated. I'll link it down below. It's almost 3 minutes. But this video is of an entire platoon of Russian soldiers who surrendered to Ukraine together, including 2 officers, a lieutenant and a captain. And they're part of the Russian 110th Brigade. They were ordered by their leadership to basically go on a suicide mission to Avdiivka. At this point, all of these Russian soldiers have seen wave after wave of Russian soldiers suiciding into Avdiivka. Once they got the order, it was their turn to go next. They basically mutinied, and they found a way to surrender to Ukraine. There's a black box covering their faces. These men are being filmed on camera, but they know that if they're returned to Russia while Putin is still in power, they'll probably all be executed for treason. But this is the current state of the Russian military. So Russia's got to get creative if they want to win this war, or at least just hold on to their current territory. A bill on socially useful work for children was introduced in the Russian State Duma. If the bill is passed, the ban on forced child labor in Russia will finally be lifted. So I guarantee you we're getting to the point. Once again, Russia is just turning into a larger version of North Korea, but they will start taking 10, 11, 12-year-old boys out of school and have them digging trenches or doing whatever. This is the current state of the Russian people. Here's an interesting headline. The USS aircraft carrier, the Gerald Ford, makes historic visit to Norway on its inaugural cruise. The Ford, which is expected to stay in Norway's capital, Oslo, until next week, is the first U.S. carrier to visit the country in 65 years. So Oslo, Norway is located right here. Technically, you could say the aircraft carrier is in the North Sea, but it's awfully close to the Baltic Sea, close to Kaliningrad, close to St. Petersburg if Russia tries anything. How many fighter jets can fit on the deck of the USS Gerald Ford? And it looks like the aircraft carrier currently holds 80 aircraft. And Russia hates this. Russia condemns illogical US aircraft carrier visiting Norway. Well, maybe on Kremlin state TV, you should stop threatening to nuke the United States every single night. But it's been awfully nice of the Russians to give NATO almost a year and a half to plan and prepare for Russia's destruction should Russia attempt to do anything. The rest of the video is just good news for Ukraine. Norway announces it will start training pilots on F-16s. So thank you so much, Norway. Poland is also in on the fighter jet coalition. Poland will train Ukrainian pilots on F-16s. If they're not already doing it, Poland might secretly have been training some pilots. Breaking news, Sweden announces it will start training Ukrainian pilots on their domestic fighter jet, the Gripen. I have no idea if Ukraine is going to get both F-16s and Gripens, but I mean, can't hurt to do some training. And the United States announced that starting next week, Ukrainians will begin their training on the Abrams tank. I believe this is happening in Germany, and by August or September, US-made Abrams tanks will be on the front lines in Ukraine. The Swiss government has decided to sell 25 decommissioned Leopard 2 tanks back to Germany. Switzerland would only do this if they knew what was going to happen to these Leopard 2 tanks. More than likely, Germany is going to donate them to Ukraine. Ukraine issued an appeal to the European allies on Sunday, asking to urgently receive ambulances for the front lines ahead of their counterattack, and Poland responded first and sent 26 ambulances within the first 24 hours. So Poland's been incredible, in my opinion, pound for pound, the most important country that has been helping Ukraine so far. Iceland has bought and donated 10 fuel trucks to the Ukrainian army. Combined, they're worth about 4 million euros, but Iceland does not have a lot of people, so for their size, this is a huge and welcome contribution. The Netherlands has decided to allocate another 260 million euros for the purchase of 155mm artillery shells. It's just a question of ramping up production, but inevitably, Ukraine will have an artillery advantage over the Russians. It's just a question of time. Final couple feel-good clips I have for you. The first one is from the Georgian Legion. So these are all Georgian citizens fighting against the Russians with Ukraine. For the people of Georgia, 20% of their country is currently occupied by the Russian military, and they know what's at stake if Ukraine does not win this war. These guys look fired up. Final clip I have for you is a Ukrainian defender visiting home, and he's welcomed at the door, I think by his twin daughters. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.